And now it's time for another edition of What Would Jello Do? Sadly, I guess I have to do another one now on Ferguson, Missouri. Many of you may remember that Dead Kennedy song, Riot, that ends with "Tomorrow you're homeless, tonight it's a blast," which was written at the time about riots in Liberty City in Miami in 1980, when once again, black kid murdered by the police and the black community goes crazy, but of course is contained in their own neighborhood and burned up their own homes and businesses. And funny how sometimes the cops just let a little of that go on. Oh, we got to let them blow off steam as long as they're destroying their own neighborhoods and stuff. I have no idea how many of the businesses that burned the first night in Ferguson were locally owned and black owned. I noticed only about half of them were names of chains I recognized, and one of them was a storage space where a bunch of people had their stuff burned up. That's really going to show the cops who's oppressed, isn't it? That was crazy. But in a way, I think it's better that McCullough threw the case now and did such a bumbling, obvious job of it and exposed the whole culture that they thought they could get away with that in the first place. I think it would have been worse if he tried to do a trial and still get the cop off, and that would have been even worse. I mean, we saw that in San Francisco with the infamous assassination of Harvey Milk and San Francisco's Mayor George Moscone by an ex-cop and supervisory board member named Dan White, who crept in the one window in City Hall he knew would be open, gunned him down, and the cops almost openly supported him the whole time, wearing free Dan White t-shirts under their uniforms. A friend of mine who was one of the photographers for Search and Destroy and other punk scenes and lived across from jail said he saw cops going in, bringing what he thought was gourmet takeout food so Dan White didn't have to eat the prison food. And of course, his defense was he'd eaten too many Twinkies and it made him temporarily insane, diminished capacity, and he got off with a 3 to 5 year sentence for manslaughter, and all hell broke loose. Those burning police cars on the front cover of Dead Kennedy's Fresh Fruit from Rotting Vegetables, they're from the Dan White night riots. But little known was what should have been a much more explosive charge made by longtime muckraking journalist Warren Hinkle, that it was quite possible that the district attorney Joe Freitas threw the case on Dan White on purpose because he was being blackmailed by the police, that they were going to expose all the backdoor corruption and connections with Jim Jones if he went whole hog on Dan White. Of course, the Jonestown massacre had happened right before Moscone and Milk were assassinated by Dan White, and Jones was once head of the city housing authority, a little post awarded to him by Mayor-elect George Moscone, because all the Jonestown, the People's Temple people had gone out and campaigned for him. Yeah, but to review from part one of this, some things we learn from Ferguson. Again, the police should never be in charge of investigating themselves. No more internal affairs, public affairs. Every police officer action, from their training exams to their psychiatric evaluations, should be public affairs because they're there to protect and serve the public, right? Well, I guess I walked into that one, didn't I? And police should be elected, voted on by the people they patrol, thus they have to live there too, to 4-year terms, and should be subjected like airline pilots to regular psychiatric tests to see if they're losing it and maybe need to be pulled out of that car and off the beat for a while. And individual cops should have to pay part of their own money in brutality and wrongful death claims, and not just the city coffers or their insurance or whatever. So we don't have things like another case that happened in Missouri just a couple of years ago or 3, it's still winding its way through the courts, where a guy was pulled over, whatever, taken to jail for doing something lawful while black, and they had the crap beat out of him by the police, and the only crime they could find to charge him with was assault on a police officer because he bled on their uniforms. And guess where this happened? A little town called Ferguson. Yeah. So this has gone on for a long time, and it's not just motivated by racism, hatred, and the fact that the police are basically the legalized version in some cases of the mafia or the Hells Angels or even Latin American death squads. In the end, it's all about the money. Check this out. This is the cover story in the, I think it's the current Mother Jones. It's on the stands right now. Warrior Cops. You know, about the insane runaway corruption that defines the Department of Homeland Security, who is basically, at this point, acting as kind of a pass-through brokerage firm for not just the Homeland Security terrorist industrial complex, but for the police industrial complex. Started before that, too. Since 1906, according to this article, the Pentagon has given away almost $2 billion of equipment used for warfare to American police departments. 80,000 assault rifles, 200 grenade launchers, 12,000 bayonets. 12,000 bayonets to use against American citizens? Why? Why do you want to use bayonets against American citizens en masse like that unless you're Egypt, Israel, or Pinochet or whatever? Is that what we're going for? Or is it simply all about the money? Because the $2 billion, according to the article, pales in comparison to what the Homeland Security Department has been granting people since its creation. $41 billion in grants to local police departments to fight terrorism. But the key word is grants. They're not giving away the weapons. They're giving the department the money, and then the directions on what they should spend our tax money on. How about some of those big MRAP vehicles we used in occupying Iraq? You can use them in your own city. You know, when somebody protests the murder of a teenager in Ferguson, you counter them with these tank-like things to show them who's boss. I mean, the war on drugs figures in this too. Why on earth does every single hick town in this country, over 25,000 population, need their own SWAT team? Oh, to fight terror, defend freedom. Oh, keep people from bringing drugs in. Well, you get all this equipment, all these machine guns, all this SWAT training, a tank or two, bunch of gas. You're all dressed up and know where to go. You want to use this stuff. You want to have fun with your new toys. So most of what SWAT teams are used for now is serving arrest warrants and doing drug raids against people who are disproportionately of color. You know, there's this symptom. Even when I studied martial arts briefly, I kind of wanted to try it out, and sure enough, got in a fight I probably wouldn't have otherwise and got the crap kicked out of me. What if I'd had a gun in many situations in my life where I felt like blowing somebody away? I'd still be sitting in prison for some scumbag who deserved to be shot clear back in the 1980s. You don't want to get into this stuff. That's what George Zimmerman was doing when he murdered Trayvon Martin. God, I can hardly wait to actually use this gun, especially if it's on a black guy. Ooh, we get to use our tanks now in Ferguson, Missouri. Hey, look what we got. I mean, once I came back from a visit to my family back and found that there were two gun freaks staying at my house who were so into their guns they were even wearing pistols and shoulder holsters when it was hot outside, and that was all they had on and stuff. And their excuse is, oh, you never know when you might need one. And that's what people do with all these training and all these weapons. It's like the Gulf War, where we use that as a showcase of all these, our own weapons of mass destruction, to get all the oil sheiks and the Saudis, you know, our despots, as opposed to the Saddam Hussein or ISIS or Assad despots, to buy this stuff to use on who? Israel? No, you use it on your own people. You know, just like we did with the Shah and everything. And a defense secretary named Dick Cheney kept harping on how he wanted to drop a nuclear bomb on Baghdad just to see what happened. You know, hey, we got all these toys. Let's use them now. All this money coming down from the Department of Homeland Security, instead of spending it on machine guns, bayonets, tanks, and weapons of mass destruction to use on your own civilian population, they could be using that money for what they claim they don't have the money for right now, cameras strapped on every police officer when they're on duty in the United States. That's where the money is, that's where it would come from, and there have already been studies showing that the brutality complaints against the cops been cut in half as soon as they put those cameras on the police. And it's the cops' best interest too, because if somebody lies and claims they were brutalized, then the cop can prove their innocence as well, instead of just being this ice-cold, sick little neo-Nazi vibe guy like Darren Wilson saying, oh, I have no regrets. I did what police officers are supposed to do. You know, he was that far away. I could have pulled my club. I could have tased him. No, I just blew the kid away. You know why? Well, let's see what I can do with you. Well, I don't want to go into that again. But you get what I'm going with this. This is a national security issue. It's a homeland security issue. After all, how secure are we really when we have less to fear from ISIS or Al-Qaeda, or worse yet, the lone wolves that no amount of NSA spying seems to be able to catch, like Timothy McVeigh and the Tsarnaev brothers who blew up the Boston Marathon? We have less to fear from them than we do from our own cops.